So Scarbs, day one of the Bahrain test, reasonably interesting, reasonably.
Yes, I mean, for me, all the talk is about the Red Bull RB20, but we have seen, the Williams FW46 properly for the first time, and a chance to have a good close look at all the other cars up and down the pit lane. But yeah, as I say, that the key thing really is trying to decode, what is going on with the RB20. And I think we've made some progress today, although there's still a few questions outstanding.
Well, talk us through what's on your mind, re the RB20.
So if you remember when we did our video only a few days ago about the RB20, I said that I think there were two inlets. Everyone was talking about these vertical inlets on the car, and I didn't believe that was the whole cooling package. And I had a look at the CGI stuff that they had and lightened lots of their other images and found some inlets below what I was describing, the beak of the front of the side pod. And today, yes, that was confirmed that there are inlets there. We also found some other inlets which we weren't expecting, which were some just around the halo, just behind the driver's head, and they were inlets. So it's like, okay, what's going on here? So I have a theory, and obviously this is day one of testing, so this is still very much a theory. I can't confirm everything. So let's start off those, what I'm calling the shark mouth inlets under the beak of the side pods, which gives kind of what we describe as an overbite setup. And again, it looks just like a shark's mouth if you kind of look at it. There's an inlet there, and that goes into the side pods quite conventionally to the radiators that are probably cooling the combustion engine and bits and pieces like that. So that seems fairly straightforward. Then we've also got the roll hoop, and the roll hoop has got the three pieces in it as usual. The middle one is for the air box for the turbo engine, and then the two outside ones are for probably hybrid or maybe gearbox hydraulic coolers, which are mounted just behind the roll hoop above the engine. Again, all quite conventional. Then we come to these halo inlets, which we've never seen before. Red Bull have played with some inlets in that area before, but that's just a bit of aerodynamic work rather than anything else. Lots of conjecture. I think I've now found a picture that shows that they actually lead to yet more little coolers. So rather than having a big package of centerline coolers above the engine, which makes that engine cover really bulky, Adrian Newey and Red Bull appear to have done what Toro Rosso have done so many times in the past, is package lots of them just behind the roll hoop and the monocoque. So those halo inlets go in to a couple of small coolers, and they're immediately ducted outwards to the louvers that are in the side of the engine cover. And that means that it looks like it's a two-part set of louvers that they have in the engine cover. The front pair are the ones which are for these halo inlets. And I think we'll find that they're permanently open because it looks like it's the way that it's been designed. So that's most of it explained, apart from those vertical inlets. Now, we were describing them as S-duct inlets. Some people believe they were the main cooling side pod inlets. And while I believe the rest of what I've explained so far is probably quite accurate, this is where I'm starting to guess. Now, I've had a few words from people and I've seen a few pictures. I think that actually within that side pod, you've got your usual radiators laying down in that sort of the main bulge of the side pods. I think there's another pair of coolers lying almost on the floor underneath them, and they are fed by that S-duct inlet, that vertical inlet. So there's no S-duct. It's not like Ferrari. It's something completely different. It is cooling. And I'm guessing that they've put the turbo intercoolers, which are the big air-to-air ones, on the floor of the car, ducted air either underneath or on top of them, and then they exit the air out through the back of the Coke bottle area. And that just allows Red Bull to get the deep water slides that they want on the top of the side pods, those big gullies, which weren't on the launch car. They were hidden on the launch car. It was slightly disguised, but I think we're now starting to see more of it. And there's one other little mystery on the car, is it's got these big cannon outlets going across the back of the, from the cockpit back to the back of the car. And there's a couple of detachable panels on there at the very end, and I can't quite work out what's going on there. So I think maybe we'll see even more secrets being shown by the Red Bull. But again, the other thing with the Red Bull is that lots of people were talking that these were zero pods. They were a copy of Mercedes, that at some point they're going to go very much to what Mercedes have run for the past 2 years. I think that's complete fake. I don't think there's any facts behind that. The hardware and the structure we see there wouldn't make a zero pod in any shape or form. So I think we're actually looking at what is, in some respects, quite a conventional side pod, but with some weird details and some weird ways about going things, and it makes it quite unique. And certainly from the pace today, that it's working for them.
So is it fair to say that Adrian's approach then was, I want to maximize the effect of the gullies, and to do that, I'm going to really focus on the packaging of the radiators. And he's actually got more radiators than he might have, but they're smaller and they're spread all over the back of the car, giving him using every available bit of space. Is that the right way to perceive this?
Yes, I mean, very much. I've got a rather probably unique view on how Newey does things. I don't think Newey is someone that actually comes up with his own innovations most of the time. He actually is very good at looking what other people have done in the past and reapplying it. So like the exhaust blown diffuser or active suspension was very much those sort of things, stuff that he's brought back and has got the engineering and the aerodynamics working. So you're right. What he's done, he's copied Toro Rosso with the centerline cooling. He's copied what was originally a Renault idea, but was equally copied by Sauber, Ferrari, and Haas with the V-shaped side pods, where you've got the radiators stacked one above each other. So yeah, he really has kind of just repackaged everything, as you say, to get those gullies, to get the airflow over the top of that side pod, over that kind of beaked inlet, down the gullies and over to the diffuser and the beam wing, which is where you really start to make downforce at the back of the car. So yeah, it's quite unique in an almost conventional and copycat way.
Yeah. Ferrari and Mercedes, where are they at now? Both of them completed a reasonable number of laps, not as many as Red Bull, obviously. Mercedes seemed to have a bit of a stressful day, in and out of the garage a lot. How do you see them so far, and what have we seen on those cars that are different from the launch?
Well, on both those cars, really, there isn't a huge amount of detail jumping out at us. A few little sort of details. We're starting to see the new driver cooling duct, which was introduced this year after the heat of Qatar last year. Lots of teams using it as a little aerodynamic aid as much as it has been for driver cooling. Merc have got theirs just on the top of the chassis, almost above the driver's feet. So where it will cool the driver, but probably has quite a useful aerodynamic effect in that position as well. Not much else I've seen on there. I mean, it's really early days. I mean, I think Mercedes, as you say, had a difficult day. I can remember in the their years of dominance, they'd come straight out the first day of testing and go straight into long runs of like 20 laps. So different times for them. But I think it's too early to say. But I think that they're certainly in the ballpark from what we've seen so far. So there's no red flags really to say that they've dropped it this year, and one of them should be dropping back any further. So I think
any talk about the legality of the fourth element?
On the Mercedes front wing, their 3.1 element front wing, as I call it, yeah, there has been some talk about it. Mercedes have obviously said yes. We spoke to the FIA about this all the way along, and from what I saw of it at the launch point, it looked completely legal. Today, I'm a little bit more skeptical because the last flap, the fourth flap on the front wing, is full width all the way up to like that sort of center section where you have the split in the wing anyway, and then it's supposed to go into this very narrow strip. But what it isn't actually now doing, those two strips aren't connecting, and I think this is where we could have a problem for Mercedes. Now, of course, the big deep element has to be adjustable as part of the design of the front wing, but it isn't actually meeting the fish plate that the two pivot on. And I can see that the FIA may ask to have that bit looked at, but in terms of the general concept, it remains, as far as I'm concerned, legal, albeit, I hate to say it, not in the spirit of the regulations, but not in the point of the regulations. We went through all this work to create cars that were easy to overtake, and developments like this, which would be pushing off a big vortex, a bit like the old Y250 vortex, out behind the front wheels, out around the car, creating lots of outwash, is detrimental to racing. So, let's forget about that horrible term, spirit of the regulations. It is actually trying to undermine what those post 2022 regulations were trying to do. So I can see that there will be more discussion about this as we go forwards, and maybe it lasts for a year and it will get banned, or maybe it will get banned earlier, or maybe the FA, like they've done with other aspects of the front wing end plate and the rear wing end plate, actually just decided to say, look, just leave it. Let's focus on 2026.
Well,
So
you
it's
make a
all
good
open.
point there, because a trigger for the FIA might be if another team rings the technical director and says, "Oh, we want to go the Mercedes route. What's the wording on that?" And then the alarm bells will go off. If everybody starts running it, then we really are in trouble with the essence of the regulations, as you say. It'll probably be another team that will trigger that.
It will be. I mean, it's quite easy. They don't even have to go as far as creating the Mercedes 3.1 shape wing. All they need to do is just cut their adjustable flap element short of the fish plate where they pivot, and say, is that legal? And in my opinion, that is, dubiously legal. So if someone suggested that, that would therefore, as you say, move on to Mercedes and say, no, you're going to have to change it. They can change it and still have that general shape to be legal. But I think, I think there will be more discussions. And certainly you've heard lots of the media today kind of stoking this up, speaking to other team technical directors, trying to find out what's going on. And Pat Simmons has sort of said the same thing as I've said, really. It's legal. It's not in the spirit of the regulations.
So what's your gut feeling about the Mercedes at the moment in terms of how quick it is relative to Ferrari and Red Bull?
Well, I think at this stage, to Ferrari, I don't think, we can't pick them apart. I haven't really looked at the times and the data in any depth, but I think Mercedes really have clawed a big chunk of that back. So looking at the three teams, I would expect Red Bull to be leading, but I think Mercedes will be the one snapping at their heels, perhaps more than Ferrari will, is my feeling, only after one day of testing.
And looking at the Ferrari now, you said in the video at the launch that you were a bit surprised that they're as conservative as they are at the rear with the pull rod rear, and they're perhaps using up more space there than they need to. Do you see them changing that rear end as the season goes on? Does it look like a car they're going to rapidly update as the season's underway? Do you still go along that theory?
Oh, absolutely. The car will develop through the year. It just seems strange that they go so safe for the first four races, or however many races it will be before they introduce a change to it. But as I say, what I saw of the car at its launch is it's very modular, and it's very easy for them to take panels out and stick panels on. So we could even see them trying stuff on a Friday and putting the car back to conventional spec for the rest of the weekend. So I think Ferrari have got work to do on that car, as do Mercedes, no doubt, as well. They've probably got things that they're going to want to be playing with. So, the point I made about being a little bit disappointed with the Ferrari, maybe less so with the Merc, is that, again, if we want a championship battle, they've got to come out fighting at round one, and they can't sort of play it safe, because clearly Red Bull aren't, and they've got to catch them up and overtake them, which is a big development ask for any team.
McLaren actually finished the day second quickest, just ahead of the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris at the wheel on this occasion. Impressed with the McLaren? Anything changes there since the launch? You didn't see a lot. We couldn't see a lot at the launch at the McLaren, could we?
No, and I was kind of hoping to see a lot more detail on the car as it was running. Nothing massively jumping out. We spoke in a previous video that they've got this little side pod winglet added to the car, which isn't, it's a big visual thing, but I don't think it's, it's anything that's kind of primary or secondary performance. So yeah, the car seems to be working really well, and I think more than anything for McLaren is getting that car working in the way the drivers are comfortable with, because I think that will bring almost as much time as normal performance aero work and stuff like that, because I think it's been a handicap of that car for a few years. It's been hard to handle, and if they've got that right, and certainly from the limited amount I saw it on track through videos today, it looks good. Maybe they have shuffled up to join the top four in a more permanent way. So yeah, I think things are positive there. Again, obviously with the caveat that this is really early days.
We never really did a detailed description of the Williams, or it's the first time we've seen the Williams, and also the Haas.
Yes.
You just want to talk us through there. You've mentioned the Williams already. It didn't have a great day in terms of reliability. today.
No, I mean, it's quite strange. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what was wrong with the Williams. I think it was a gearbox issue, which actually brings up one of the key features. Generally, the Williams is quite a conventional car. It's, to say, very much one of those 2024 template cars. Big underbite on the front of the side pods, gully water slides going down the back. Everything on the car just looks nice and neat and tidy and very logical. There's nothing sort of shouting out. But they have decided to keep the 2023 Mercedes gearbox package. Now, as we've spoken about lots of times before we speak, the gearbox consists of the gears plus the gear cluster itself, which is a self-contained unit called the cassette or the cartridge. And then you've got the outer carbon fiber casing, which we call the carrier, and that defines what your rear suspension is. Very Red Bull-like in terms of the package of the new Mercedes pushrod setup. So therefore, Williams keeping the older version with a slightly unusual length in comparison to the new one and pull rod is detrimental potentially in terms of performance. Now, it's not a kind of the car could never be competitive in that format. It's just they're giving away some diffuser performance with this. And James Bowser says, well, yeah, it is part of the budget cap. We decided not to buy the new gearbox and spend the money on that. And instead, they're playing around with the old one, saving their money, spending their development in other areas, which is obviously what they feel is important to them. So that's quite unusual. The rest of the car, as I say, is all quite conventional.
And the Williams, conventional, even to the point where they have a display on the steering wheel now. Amazing.
Yeah. That was the other thing. I was trying to remember. I said there was something else really important I had to mention about the Williams because it is generally a conventional cookie cutter car. But yeah, they have a new steering wheel pattern that we saw as a little teaser on their launch video of the livery. And yes, they've gone from having the McLaren dash display on the chassis in front of the cockpit to actually being on the steering wheel, and they've got a very triangular shaped steering wheel pattern underneath with all of the dials and everything. Yeah, I mean, there's been so much talk about the steering wheel since 2014, and it's probably, for me, it's the most asked question I get, and I must have answered it hundreds, if not thousands of times. It's not that important. Their decision back then was probably quite a snap decision late on a Friday afternoon. It's like, where do we put it? Stick it on the chassis. It takes some load out of the steering. It makes the steering a bit, less inertia, a bit quicker for the drivers to work with. Less work for the hydraulic pump to overcome for the power assistance on the steering. They've gone back. I'd be surprised if anyone in the team really notices the difference. The drivers weren't complaining about it. The engineers aren't complaining about it. It's just a tiny design decision. But yeah, end of an era. It's kind of sad in some respects. I don't know what I'm going to talk about for the next few years.
Well, new era, speaking of eras, at Haas with new management in the team, Komatsu-san, very good day for him. The most number of laps covered by any team, incredibly. A few glitches, but nonetheless, good job. What do you think of the Haas?
Oh, well, I think if we had to rate the teams from 1 to 10, I think sadly we have to put Haas at the bottom at the moment. Again, the car generally, it's conventional. As I say, it's one of these cookie cutter cars. It's got all of the features that we would expect. It's got some new features on it. It's got quite complicated floor edge wings. It's got some complication in the front wing end plate cutaway in at the rear wing as well. But it does feel a car from late last year rather than something that's rolled out. If we take, say, for example, the Mercedes or the Red Bull, it doesn't feel like a fresh, clean sheet 2024 car. But maybe that's the point. I don't think Haas's problem. I mean, I think some of their problems will be in the amount of downforce, but I think they've got much bigger issues in how they operate that team, which is almost a completely different discussion.
Yeah.
They've really got to sort out their tyre woes, and you would hope that Komatsu is the person that can kind of lead that onwards now that he is the top dog there at the team. Let's hope he doesn't get mired down in all the other minutiae that you get as being a team principal. And we've seen many very good technical people become team principals, and it's a very different discipline, and you do lose your focus. So there is a concern there, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt. The team have got some growing to do, and there's nothing on that car that can't be changed with an aggressive update package. They've got the wind tunnel time. Let's hope that they've got the budget to progress that car. But there's nothing really on it that's worth talking about, other than just one little point I would love to make is every time we see a launch car, particularly when it's a rendered image or something like the Red Bull that was kind of very carefully hidden on stage, everyone replies to my analysis going, but that won't be the car at Bahrain, and that's not, that's just a dummy car. Their render was incredibly accurate to the car that we've seen testing today, as are all of the cars. I mean, I think apart from some of the things that were hidden, certainly the big changes that we picked up on all of the cars during the launches are present. So, there is some, reason that we do this analysis.
But speaking of that, Scarbs, what's happened with the front of the Alpine side pods there? Because you were a bit dubious about that with the black sections on the front.
Yeah, I still remain dubious. I've been looking for some good pictures today, but I've not found them yet. But they are now in carbon fiber. So that takes one of my questions of doubt. If you remember, I was saying that they were painted black when everything else of the car seemed to be bare carbon. Maybe they were just 3D printed mock-ups to get the car on the launch pad, as it were, while the carbon bits were being made up. But still, I think that that's an area where Alpine have got, something to play with and something to gain some performance from. So I'm half-heartedly admitting that maybe I was wrong, but I'm still optimistic that there's some development there. So I'll keep looking at the pictures and seeing what I can find in the shadows, and we'll talk later about that.
Well, Scarbs, thanks so much for your analysis. At the moment, we've got to give you about 90%, I think, in terms of what you saw and what you think they're doing and what's going on out there. Very, very good, as ever. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Peter.